Hello friends, for today I'm going to be doing another Worth the Hype style video, and I've done one of these previously. I'll have that one linked if you'd like to see more after watching this. But when I do this style of video, as opposed to what I think that the title would imply, which is just mentioning some popular hyped books and then saying whether I think they're worth the hype or not, going a step further, instead of just doing that, I like to go through and let you know what the average ratings are for each of these books, how many ratings there are currently at the time I'm filming, how many there are for each of these books, and then based off of the average ratings, rank them, but then compare that to what my individual ranking would be. So it's kind of looking at, did these exceed the hype for me? Did they meet the hype for me? Do I match the general hype? It seems a lot of other people have. And then also pose the question of, did these exceed the hype? Did they meet the hype, or did they not for all of you? And I'm going to go through the books we'll be discussing. Because I talk so much on my channel about new fantasy releases, I am not including those. These are either backlist fantasy or older sci-fi works or just other genres. So the first one that we're going to start with, or I should say the first one on this list, would be Spy Family. This is, if you don't know, an incredibly popular manga series right now. There's also an anime out. Spoiler alert, I love it, so I'm already revealing that I do think it's worth the hype. But we'll talk about the average rating and everything. And I will give you some information about all these, a little brief overview in case you have maybe seen them around, but you want to know a little bit more about them. But anyway, we're also going to be talking about Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. We have Murderbot by Martha Wells. And I do want to be clear, I'm only going to be referring to the first, which is All Systems Red. The thing is, I already returned that one to the library. I happen to have some other ones now from the library. I just haven't picked them up yet. But in talking about Murderbot today, we're just going to be referring to the first of the novellas. So Murderbot, we have Serpent and the Wings of Night. And then we have the Flatshare. So we have a mix of different genres. We have a manga mixed in to all this. I'll start with the amount of ratings for each of these and their average ratings. And while doing each of that, while going through each of those, I'll let you know about each of the stories. So I'll start with the Flatshare. It's the only one I don't have a physical copy of currently, as I also returned this to the library recently. But this is a story where we follow a young woman who is kind of down on her luck. She just got out of a relationship that you as the reader can see was not a very good relationship. However, it seems our main character might have had some things occur within the relationship that have made it difficult for her to assess reality, which is something I think a lot of people have experienced before. And she now has to find a place to live. She doesn't really have a lot of money. She doesn't really have a lot of time. She needs to move out of the place that she shared with her former partner. And so she ends up going ahead with this plan to share a flat with somebody who works nights. She works days. So the idea is they each get to live in this place, but they'll always miss each other. And it works out because then it's as if they have their own flat. They just happen to, share the same space. And the other perspective in the story is the person that she is sharing the flat with, hence the title, The Flatshare. And this other person is a palliative care nurse. And so I feel like there's a lot to his perspective that provides a lot of kind of depth about what's going on with other individuals around them, people who are sick or dying or who are elderly, and sometimes people who are recovering too. But there's a lot there. There's a lot of substance in general to this story. It seems like it's going to be so cute and so sweet and so fun, and then it kind of hits you with a lot of heavier things, and I think it did a very good job of hitting those things. But the way in which these characters get to know each other is because they're existing within the same space, just at different times. They leave each other notes, and they kind of get to know each other through these notes, and they almost kind of become friends. They let each other know about their day and all that stuff. So it's one that I think was very fun. The setup was really fun, but also that additional depth, I think, is what really has pulled a lot of people in and made a lot of people like it. And it's the one on this list that has the most ratings, which isn't that big of a surprise. I feel like contemporary romance tends to have a lot. It has 341,970 at the time that I'm filming this, and the average rating is 4.02. So very highly regarded, and I did quite enjoy it. I another spoiler alert. I liked all of these. The last time I did this, there were a couple that I wasn't as big of a fan of. I liked all of these, and it actually was kind of difficult when I was making my own ranking to decide where they're going to go, but we'll get around to that later. Next up, we have All Systems Red. This is a sci-fi novella that follows Murderbot, who is, as the name would give away, a machine that is pretty much designed to efficiently kill and protect. So it is currently having a job with some human beings. They treat Murderbot in a lot of ways like a person, which makes Murderbot kind of uncomfortable, and it doesn't really know what to make of that, and it just wants to do its job, and it also just wants to watch reality TV. And I think there's a lot to Murderbot's character that can be very relatable to a lot of people, especially if you are somebody who finds you have a lot of social anxiety, or that you find you get overwhelmed by various different things. I think that you're going to really connect to Murderbot. The story in the first novella, I do think that the plot is not the thing that is the catalyst for movement. It's not the thing that really pushes the story forward. However, I don't think that's what most people are picking Murderbot up for. So, as I said, I enjoyed all of these. That's true of this one as well. The average rating is 4.16 for All Systems Red. And the amount of ratings, we have 187,836. I was actually surprised. I knew it was a BookTube darling. I knew it was something a lot of people on BookTube really loved, but I didn't realize just how popular it was outside of BookTube. So that actually excites me quite a bit. I think that's really cool. Next up, we have Yellowface. I tried to make sure that most of the things I would be talking about would have over 100,000 ratings. This one I made an exception for because it's pretty new. I said before that I don't have new fantasy on these lists, but this is not fantasy. It's just contemporary. So I went ahead and included it. It currently has 72,675. So despite only just recently coming out, it already has a lot of ratings. The average rating currently is 4.07. And this follows a young woman who has always been very jealous of her friend, who's kind of the it girl author. Everybody loves her. She's so pretty and she's so perfect and she's rich and she's smart, and her books, everybody loves her books, and she is very jealous, but she also is kind of friends with her. So it's a weird dynamic. And then Athena is the very it girl character's name. She dies, and our main character has seen her manuscript, Athena's manuscript, and decides, well, this really deserves to be published, and it deserves to see the light of day. And if publishing gets their hands on it now, then everybody's always going to think of it as her unfinished manuscript. It deserves to be in the world, polished and perfect, and the best version of it that it can be. So I'll take care of that. And then she essentially publishes the work as her own. Not essentially, she does. She publishes the work as her own, and then things ensue. And I found it highly entertaining. I think she is so repulsive as a person, but also you kind of can't look away. And I think what I really liked about this in particular is the way in which R.F. Kuang takes a look at how publishing treats its authors, how authors treat each other, how reviewers treat authors, how various different publications treat authors, the way that people respect certain authors or don't based off of various different things. And she's looking at the ugliest version of all of that. And then she's showing it unveiled for you to have fun with. It's like watching reality TV if everybody is awful. And it really was like a car crash you can't look away from. I never liked that phrase. As I was saying it, I'm like, I don't like that phrase because it's horrible. I feel like car crashes are really sad. But you know what I mean? You know that phrase that I'm talking about. It's just like a horrible thing that you're like, but I must keep watching. And I thought it was really entertaining. So I already covered the amount of ratings and the average rating for that one. Let's talk about Spy Family next. Spy Family. You can already tell this isn't my number one. I'm just giving that away now. I love Spy Family so much. The setup for Spy Family is you follow this man named Lloyd Forger. It is essentially a Cold War era story, but it's not actually our own world, but it basically is. And Lloyd is a spy, and he needs to gain information on somebody who is known to keep to themselves, and the only in they can see would come in the form of their enemy's child who goes to this prestigious school called the Eden Academy. And so Lloyd needs to become a father. He needs to have a wife and a child who goes to this school so that he can have the children befriend each other, or he can befriend the child's father and then get the information that he needs. So he ends up finding a woman to pose as his wife, and she does not know he's a spy, and he does not know that she's an assassin. And then the little girl that he adopts to be his daughter to go to this prestigious school is somebody who has the ability to read people's minds, and how she makes use of that is sometimes clever and sometimes not at all. And then it's just silliness takes place soon after. It's so fun. It's so ridiculous. It's so over the top. It is the best time. It's a blast. I love it so much. If you do want to see more in-depth thoughts about this one, because it's a manga series, I talk about manga and comics and video games and shows and adaptations and such things over on my side channel, so I'll have that linked if you'd like to see a more in-depth non-spoiler review. But I love Spy Family so much, and it's very popular. So Goodreads is usually not a good indication of just how popular a manga series is, because a lot of people don't rate manga like they do other works, but this one is that's not the case for it. It has 101,567 ratings for just this first volume, and it's at 4.5, so it is very well loved, and I think it deserves all that love. The last one that we're going to be looking at would be Serpent and the Wings of Night. I would say that this was kind of more like a Bookstagram darling, at least from what I saw. I was seeing a lot of people discuss it on that social media app, and I gave it a try. I think a lot of other people kind of saw it being talked about over there as well, or maybe Book Talk. I don't know. I don't have Book Talk, or I don't have TikTok. Anyway, so this one is a fantasy romance. I would say it's much more fantasy than a lot of other fantasy romance, and it definitely spends a lot more time fleshing out the world and letting you get to know the main character, understanding the stakes, and setting everything up before the romance really comes into the picture. Our main character is somebody who is a human, and she is allied herself with the person who runs the vampires, essentially. They adopted her, so it's like her father figure, and she recognizes that she will never be able to help them attain their goals, and she will never really be able to defend herself without his protection unless she is able to somehow gain more power for herself. And so she enters into this competition, and whoever wins will have a favor granted to them by the goddess. And the goddess, there's a lot of lore behind the goddess and the vampires and such things. So our main character decides she's going to enter this very deadly competition. And it is through this competition that she meets what is eventually the love interest of the story. And then they get to know each other in a way that I felt was quite organic. I think a lot of times from some of the fantasy romance I've read, it's so much about the attraction between the characters, that initial physical attraction, and then it ends up not really having the development in other areas of the relationship that I'm looking for. But this one I thought actually did quite a good job of that. I didn't love the ending of this first book. I haven't yet picked up the second one. I didn't hate the ending, but I didn't love it either. And I kind of preferred a lot of what happened throughout the rest of the story. But I do understand why it's getting the hype that it's getting. It has 114,428 ratings, and the average rating is 4.41. So putting these all in order based off of those average ratings, the number one would be Spy Family. And then Serpent and the Wings of Night is actually in the second place spot. After that, we have Murderbot, and then once again, it's actually all systems red, not this particular one, but I'm just putting this in as a placeholder. From there, we have Yellowface, and then at the bottom, we have the Flatshare. I do find it kind of interesting that the one that has the most ratings is the one that's the lowest. It's not a low rating. 4.02 is still very good. But I do wonder if part of it is, people that eventually came around to picking it up who didn't really like it. And maybe there's a part of hype playing a role in people not loving it later on, because I know a lot of times when something is getting a lot of praise and it's getting a lot of love, it's really hard for people that come into the book after that to kind of remove that hype from their minds, because then it's like they've already in their mind hyped it up, and if it doesn't meet that hype, then it almost makes it lower than it would have otherwise if they had just kind of picked it up on a whim. But regardless, this is the ranking based off of the average ratings. So for me, Spy Family can just stay at the top. I love Spy Family so much. I just think it's so much fun. I try to get so many people to check it out because it's the best pick-me-up. It's so fun. I just never want it to end. I feel like manga's kind of notorious for having series that last too long. And this is one of the times where I'm like, but I don't want it ever to stop. It's so good. So Spy Family's at the top. Such a blast. I'm going to go ahead and move Serpent and the Wings of Night to the bottom. For me, I liked it, but it doesn't quite compare to some of the other books on this list. I think that ending sort of did bring it down a little bit for me, and it just doesn't quite... I really enjoyed a lot of the rest of these, so I'm keeping it up there. After that, okay, I feel the need to provide a little asterisk for this next placement. Murderbot is going to go in the 4th place spot. I loved Murderbot, but I think that the best of the story is yet to come. I think I need more time with it. I already loved it just in that one novella, but I don't think I can say like, oh my gosh, I love it the same way I love Spy Family. And I do think that I've just barely scratched the surface so far. And I'm excited because I love it already, having only scratched the surface. And I have a feeling that if I were to, when I read more Murderbot Diaries, I have a feeling that it's going to be bumped way up and it would probably be in the 2nd place spot. But if I'm just looking at All Systems Red, which I am, it's going in the 4th place spot. After that, I think the Flatshare and Yellowface, I could switch those from one day to the next, because I don't know that I necessarily... Just, they have different strengths, even though they both take place in our own world, even though there's not magic or anything like that. I just find that I like how cynical and dry and ridiculous in a lot of ways Yellowface is. But then the Flatshare, I feel like, really took me by surprise with the amount of depth. I liked the characters. I liked their dynamic. So their strengths are just so different from each other that it's hard for me to say which one I liked more. I think, though, currently Yellowface I liked more. And I think that's where my biggest, most unpopular opinion is that clearly Yellowface is still very liked by a lot of people. But I don't know that it's maybe as loved by a lot of R.F. Kuang fans as some of her other works. I think Babel is a lot of people's favorite, and for me, I thought, or even The Poppy War, I just feel like Yellowface is not everybody's favorite by her, but for me it has been, so, and I did like it, even not thinking about her other works. So, for me, it goes Spy Family, Yellowface, The Flatshare, pretending that's there, Murderbot, but likely will move up once I read more, and then Serpent and The Wings of Night. I get the hype for these. It's one of those things where I'm not confused by the hype whatsoever. I did do a video recently about when the hype kind of confuses me. And it's not to say that the books are undeserving of the hype, but there are just certain books where you kind of have a mold of what typically ends up being hyped. And you can kind of predict when something's going to be hyped. And then there's those books that completely take you by surprise, and you're like, wow, I was not expecting that to get so much hype. I wasn't expecting that to become so popular. That's kind of what this other video I did recently was about. These all, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. I maybe would be surprised by Murderbot the most, because I don't know that a sci-fi novella about a murderous machine that wants to watch reality TV so many people would connect and relate to. So maybe that one surprised me a little bit. But I also can understand why so many people connect with it at the same time, because it is very relatable, even if it's not in the form maybe that we're used to seeing for our characters. But anyway, that's it for now for Were These Worth the Hype? Just kind of taking a look at some very popular and well-received stories. If you've read all of these same ones, how would you place them? How would you rank them? I will have any of the other videos that I mentioned linked in the description bar in case you'd like to see that. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.